The night began with a silence so heavy it felt like the house was holding its breath. Not the peaceful quiet of a home settling into sleep, but the kind that comes before something breaks, before a storm cracks open the sky, before the world shifts and doesn't shift back. Elena stood in the kitchen, the dim yellow bulb flickering above her like it, too, was uneasy. The cutting board was scattered with vegetables she couldn't remember slicing. Her hands had gone on moving long after her mind had drifted somewhere far away. It was the smell that brought her back, the soft burn of garlic, the earthy scent of cumin warming in oil, a smell that always used to comfort her. Tonight, it felt like a mask stretched over something rotten. Yuck! Elena paused, knife hovering midair. Something felt wrong, off as if the walls were listening. Oh, can. She glanced toward the hallway. Nothing. Just the long corridor leading into the living room, a corridor that always seemed darker than the rest of the house. Too quiet, too still, and then the sound, sharp, violent, a crack like lightning hitting glass. Elena flinched, the knife slipping from her fingers and clattering onto the counter. The sound came again, smaller this time, like fragments raining onto hardwood. She didn't run. She walked. Slowly, silently, as if moving too fast might trigger something worse. Her breath was shallow, her pulse climbing into her throat. There are sounds a mother learns to recognize. A plate dropped, a door slammed, a tantrum thrown in the heat of teenage moods. Can't, but this sound, this one came with a feeling, a warning. She stepped into the living room, and her heart dipped as if the floor had given up beneath her. There, in the center of the room, stood Mira, her 17-year-old daughter, barefoot, arms crossed. Anna's smile, sharp and small, pulling at her mouth. And at her feet lay the smashed remains of the photo frame. Not just any frame, the frame. The carved wooden, one Elena kept on the highest shelf, always dusted, always untouched. A frame that held the last existing picture of her sister, Lila, the sister who vanished 10 years ago without a trace, leaving behind a family that never healed, and a silence that never quite quieted. Yelfurk. Elena froze, not because the glass was shattered, not because the photo lay bent and torn among the shards, but because of Mira's eyes, cold flat, almost amused. Why? The question rose in Elena's mind, but she didn't speak it. Her throat wouldn't let her. Instead, she looked at her daughter, trying to find any sign, any flicker, of remorse or fear. But Mira stared back like someone staring into a mirror, bored by what she sees. She nudged a shard with her toe, as if testing its sharpness, and then… that smirk widened. It was quick. In barely a second, but Elena saw it, and something inside her tightened like a fist. She wanted to demand an explanation. To ask what this was. A tantrum? A statement? A cruelty she still didn't have the vocabulary to name? But the words died before they reached her lips. Because in that split moment, Elena realized the truth. This wasn't an accident, and Mira wasn't sorry. She was proud. Elena felt the air leave her lungs. A strange cold numbness washed over her chest, spreading outward like frost. She bent down slowly, methodically, gathering the broken pieces with trembling hands. The glass bit into her fingers, but she didn't flinch. Pain was easier to hold than whatever emotion was twisting itself through her ribs. She collected the photograph last. The edges were torn, but the face was still visible. Lila's smile, so alive, so trusting, seemed to look straight into her. Elena swallowed hard. When she looked up again, Mira was already walking away. Not a word, not even a backward glance. Her footsteps faded down the hallway, growing lighter, softer, until they disappeared behind the click of her bedroom door. The house fell silent again, but it wasn't the same silence as before. This one felt darker, hungrier. A silence that watched her. Elena sat on the edge of the couch, cracked photo pressed to her chest. Memories rose like ghosts. Lila's laughter, the way she used to brush Elena's hair, the secrets they whispered beneath blankets, the night she disappeared without leaving anything behind but that one photograph. The photo that was now ruined. A chill crept through Elena's spine. Mira had always been difficult, sharp-tongued, distant, unpredictable. But this was different, this was deliberate. And the look in Mira's eyes, that strange, cold pleasure, was something Elena could no longer ignore. She replayed the moment over and over in her mind, searching for a reason, searching for the daughter she thought she knew. Wind the shot, pal. But as she sat there in the dim room, surrounded by the pieces of her past, Elena realized something she had refused to admit for years. She hadn't known her daughter for a very long time. Incontaferten, or worse, maybe she had never known her at all. The house felt too quiet after Mira went to her room, too still. The air thickened with unspoken truths, the kind that cling to the corners of a home and wait to be discovered. Elena stood up and walked toward the hallway, stopping outside Mira's closed door. Behind it, she heard nothing. No shuffling, no breathing, just the heavy, impenetrable silence of someone who believes they've won. Elena rested her fingertips on the wood. This wasn't about the photo or the frame, or even Lila. It was about something deeper, dark, coiled, growing. A question formed in her mind, one she had been avoiding for too long. What has my daughter become? And perhaps more terrifying, what have I allowed her to become? The thought settled in her bones, cold and heavy. She turned away from the door, walking back through the dark hallway. But with each step, something inside her shifted, quietly, subtly, like a door creaking open in a place she didn't want to explore. She entered the kitchen again, the faint smell of burnt spices lingering in the air. The dinner she had been preparing now felt pointless. The house felt smaller. The shadows felt longer. Her heartbeat felt too loud. Elena switched off the stove and leaned her hands on the counter, staring at the floor as if the answers were hidden somewhere beneath her feet. Had an impatient and realization, Kappershan. In the silence, a real whispered through her. She had been gentle. She had been forgiving. Hank too forgiving, and all the while, something inside Mira had been growing like a fungus in the dark. Elena closed her eyes. A decision stirred, a seed planted by the sound of breaking glass. A seed that fed on shock, on pain, on the smirk she couldn't unsee. Kang. A seed that would grow into something she never imagined herself capable of. Not yet, not tonight, but soon. Because there are moments in a mother's life when she realizes she is no longer dealing with a child, but with a threat. And threats, she thought quietly, require answers. The house settled into silence again, but now the silence wasn't empty. It was waiting, and Elena, she was no longer sure who she feared more, her daughter, or the woman she might have to become. The next morning slipped into the house like an intruder. Quiet, cold, and unwelcome, Elena barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Mira's smirk hovering in the darkness, the broken frame glittering like tiny ice crystals on the floor. Her mind replayed the moment again and again, searching for something she missed. A reason, a trigger, a piece of the daughter she used to know. But there was only that look. That strange, distant satisfaction. By sunrise, Elena wasn't the same woman she'd been the night before. Something in her had sharpened overnight, like a blade sliding across a whetstone. A new clarity settled behind her eyes, tired but suddenly razor-focused. She found herself watching Mira in a way she never had before, not as a mother, but as an observer. The girl drifted into the kitchen like nothing had happened, scrolling on her phone, humming a song Elena didn't recognize. She didn't apologize, didn't mention the photo, didn't glance at Elena even once. Just opened the fridge, took a juice box, and walked away, not a care in the world. And that, Elena realized, was the first clue, because guilt leaves shadows, shame leaves traces. But Mira moved like a person perfectly at peace, or perfectly practiced. It wasn't new. Elena just hadn't been looking. That day, Elena began replaying everything she had overlooked, tiny fractures in her daughter that she had painted over with excuses. There were the times Mira lied effortlessly, her expression never changing. The way she gaslit classmates, twisting truths until they apologized for things they didn't do. The sudden shifts in her moods, too controlled, too calculated. The strange objects Elena found, the second phone, the hidden cash, the scribbled notes she dismissed as teenage mess. And the late-night whispers, those calls she told Elena were just friends. The memories flickered through Elena's mind like someone flipping through a stack of photographs, each one darker than the last. Why didn't I see it? A mother's love is warm, but it can also blind. And Elena had been blind for years. She saw that now, one memory landed heavier than the rest. A flashback she had buried deep. Mira at age 12, standing too close to Lila, the aunt she adored. Lila brushing a strand of hair behind Mira's ear. Mira whispering something in Lila's ear that made the older woman's smile falter. Elena had been sitting across the table that day, sipping tea, thinking nothing of it. But now she could see it clearly, Lila's eyes widening slightly, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face, quickly masked by a gentle laugh. 3 months later, Lila disappeared, vanished without a trace. And for years, Elena convinced herself the two things weren't connected, because the alternative was too unbearable to consider. But now the memory hit differently, because Mira had always been closest to Lila. Because Mira always seemed to know more about that night than she ever admitted. Because Mira talked about her aunt only in past tense, even before anyone else did. Kokumper haptramapasan kermission for hasatishkik. A chill slid down Elena's spine. What did Mira tell her? What did she see? What did she do? The questions clawed at her, relentless. She needed answers, real ones. And she wasn't going to find them inside this house. By mid-afternoon, Elena found herself driving toward the older parts of town, the places she hadn't set foot in since her 20s, where memories and mistakes lived side by side under flickering street lamps. She visited people she once knew, Lila's friends, old neighbors, even her sister's former landlord. She didn't tell them much, just enough to make them talk. Most didn't remember anything important. Some remembered too much, but one conversation lodged itself in her mind like a thorn. An older woman, Mrs. Verma, leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. Your daughter. She used to come around here a lot. Even when Lila wasn't home, Elena's throat tightened. When? Oh, months before Lila went missing. Sometimes late. Sometimes with people I didn't recognize. Elena's pulse hammered in her ears. What kind of people? She asked. Mrs. Verma hesitated, tugging at the edge of her shawl. Not the type you want a child around. Men who don't look you in the eye. Girls who talk like they're older than they are. That sort of crowd. A sick, sinking sensation spread through Elena's stomach. And you didn't tell me? You were already worried, the woman replied softly. And sometimes mothers don't want to see what's right in front of them. Elena thanked her and walked back to her car with shaking hands. So Mira had been lying for years. Meeting people Elena didn't know, shadowing Lila's steps, following a path she never should have walked. But it didn't end there, because the more Elena dug, the more a pattern began to appear, threads connecting Mira to a dot. Small ring of teenagers known for blackmail and small-time extortion, a group that operated in the cracks of the city, invisible to adults who weren't looking closely. They used information as currency, secrets as weapons, and manipulation as a language. And Mira fit the profile disturbingly well, her coldness, her distance, her uncanny ability to read people and strike where it hurt most. Fear stirred inside Elena, but it didn't stay fear for long, because fear can paralyze. But it can also transform, and for Elena it began to shift into something else, strategy. That evening, she sat in her bedroom with the door locked, scrolling through old contacts, old messages, old threads. The more she pieced together, the more she realized Mira wasn't just dabbling in danger. She was tied to it, tied to people Elena once knew only through rumors. People who operated from the shadows, who found and used weak links in families, their bar kalvession, workplaces, friendships, people who exploited grief, loss, loneliness, and people Lila might have crossed paths with before she vanished. One name stood out, Sable. A woman Elena had only heard whispers about, sharp, elusive, terrifying in her intelligence. Someone who didn't like being owed, didn't like being crossed, and didn't like the young ones getting reckless. Rumor said she'd known Lila. Rumor said she'd been looking for someone. Rumor said that someone had debt unpaid, unresolved. And rumor said she had once warned Mira to stay away. But Mira didn't listen. She never listened. Elena stared at the name on her screen until her vision blurred. Sable, a ghost from Lila's world. A shadow that lingered long after Lila was gone, a woman Mira was somehow connected to. The realization hit Elena with brutal clarity. Her daughter wasn't just acting out. She wasn't just cruel. She wasn't just broken. She was involved in something dangerous, something criminal. Something that touched the edges of Lila's disappearance. Elena pressed her palm against her forehead, steadying her breath. Pieces. Everything was pieces, shards, scattered around her life, the same way the broken frame had scattered across her floor. She could ignore them, or she could assemble them. Elena wasn't the woman she was yesterday. She wasn't the mother who tiptoed around the truth. She wasn't the woman who picked up broken glass and bled quietly. Not anymore. There was something she needed to do, a person she needed to find. Yeah, a truth she needed to drag out into the light, because if Mira had secrets, then Elena would have secrets too, and hers would be sharper. Yeah. As the night deepened, she walked down the hallway past Mira's door. A soft glow seeped out from underneath, shadows shifting as Mira moved around her room. For a moment, Elena paused, hand hovering near the wood, not to knock, not to speak, but to listen. And she heard something she hadn't expected, Mira's voice, low, cold, calculating, whispering into a phone. She looked through my things, Mira said. I'll handle it. Don't worry. A beat of silence. Jaw free. Dis. I said I'll handle it. Elena's blood ran cold. Handle what? Handle who? She took one step back, silent as breath. Her daughter wasn't oblivious. She was preparing, fawning, watching. Elena retreated into the shadows, her heartbeat steadying, her mind sharpening. She finally understood. Mira wasn't the only one who knew how to play games, and Elena, for the first time, was ready to enter the board. The night had the kind of silence that didn't feel empty. It felt watchful, the kind that made Elena check the locks twice, the kind that made shadows stretch further than they should. The kind that made every instinct in her body whisper the same warning. Tonight isn't ordinary. Mira had left an hour ago, saying she was going to study with friends, but Elena knew better now. She watched her daughter walk down the street with that same careless sway, phone in hand, confidence radiating off her like perfume. Elena waited and waited until the house settled, until the air grew heavier, until the moment felt right. And then she walked down the hallway, barefoot, holding her breath as she approached Mira's room, the one place she had avoided for years, out of respect, out of fear, out of denial. Tonight, denial no longer lived here. Her hand hovered over the doorknob. This room had always been a boundary. Mira guarded it like a territory. Elena respected that boundary not because she trusted Mira, but because she trusted herself not to see anything she wasn't ready to confront. But tonight, she wasn't seeking comfort. She was seeking truth, and truth rarely comes gently. The knob turned under her fingers with a soft click. The darkness inside the room felt unnatural, as if it had been waiting. Elena stepped in, letting the dim hallway light guide her. The air smelled faintly of perfume, and something metallic underneath. Her pulse steadied, her breath deepened, her mind sharpened. She wasn't entering as a mother. She was entering as something else. The first thing she noticed was how neat everything was. Too neat, too precise. But it wasn't the neatness that unsettled her. It was the emptiness. The bed was made perfectly. The desk wiped spotless, the floor immaculate. A teenager's room, with no teenage chaos. It was a facade, a staged surface, hiding what mattered. Elena began searching, slowly, methodically, feeling the weight of every second. Her fingers skimmed the desk drawers, the makeup kit, the bookshelf. Nothing, not even dust. But then her eyes caught something, a slight misalignment on the side of the wardrobe. A panel that sat differently from the others, not crooked, just deliberately flush, as if designed to not be noticed. Elena stepped closer. Her reflection stared back from the wardrobe mirror, dim and distorted. She touched the panel lightly. It didn't move, then she pressed harder. A soft click answered her. The panel slid open, a hidden compartment. Her stomach dropped. Inside, there was no clothing, no jewelry, no childish mementos. Instead, it was filled with things that didn't belong in any teenager's wardrobe. A stack of photographs, a black notebook with no name, a silver USB stick, a folded map of the older part of town, corners worn from use, a burner phone, dark, scratched, charged, and beneath it all, a photo Elena recognized instantly, her sister, Lila. But not the warm, smiling Lila from the broken frame. This photo was taken in a cold hallway, shoulders stiff, eyes tired, as if she didn't know the picture was even being taken. Elena's breath caught painfully in her throat. Why did Mira have this? She reached for the notebook next, flipping it open. Inside were pages of numbers, codes, names, dates, sentences written in a sharp, precise handwriting. Elena recognized intimately Mira's, but the words weren't normal. They were threats. Henkel, instructors, payments owed, information about people Elena didn't know, and people she did. One line was circled 3 times. Leverage is equal to information taken from L. Elena felt her blood go cold. L. Lila. Yek. Her hands trembled as she turned the pages. Each one was worse than the last. Lists of vulnerable people, blackmail notes, screenshots printed and taped into margins. Pikla shirties. Peace and Firks. Mira wasn't just involved, she was orchestrating. The phone vibrated suddenly. Elena froze. It wasn't a message. It was a scheduled alarm, silent but glowing. Clean up, delete chats. A cold wave washed over Elena. She opened the phone. Dozens of messages filled the screen. Threats, Whedons, demands for money. 1 hour made her a ma'am. One message made her knees weaken. She's asking questions again. But don't worry, I'll deal with her the same way I dealt with the sister. The sister, Lila. The phone slipped from Elena's fingers and hit the floor with a dull thud. She stumbled back, breath shaking, vision blurring. Her daughter wasn't just cruel, she wasn't just manipulative, she was dangerous. A soft noise drifted in from the street. Footsteps. Elena's head snapped toward the window. Mira's silhouette crossed the driveway, illuminated by the street lamp. Too early, too soon. She wasn't supposed to be back yet. Elena grabbed the notebook, the phone, the photo, shoved everything back into the hidden compartment, slid it shut, and swept into the corner behind the wardrobe, the only dark pocket deep enough to hide her. Her heart slammed against her ribs, her hands pressed over her mouth, her breath trapped in her chest. The doorknob turned, Mira entered. The energy in the room changed instantly. A shift in the air, a tightening of space. Mira stood in the center of the room, silent, scanning. She sensed something. Her eyes narrowed. She tilted her head. Listening, Elena didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. A king? Mira walked toward her desk, dropped her bag, then pulled out her phone. She dialed someone. Her voice dropped to a whisper Elena had never heard from her. Cold, precise, almost professional. Yaf profity star your faya some sulfur sib jasad otofertare. They're asking again, Mira murmured. I told you I handled it, but she's digging. A pause, a sigh. No, not the mother. She's harmless. She's always been harmless. The words stabbed deeper than Elena expected. But people downtown remember things, Mira continued. They're starting to connect her sister's disappearance with those old nights. And if she finds out what Lila did, or what I had to do, this whole thing unravels. Elena felt her fingers go numb. Lila, what I had to do. The room began to tilt. Mira lowered her voice even more. She trusted me. That was her mistake. Same mistake her mother is making now. The floor seemed to fall out from under Elena's feet. A soft laugh escaped Mira. Light, casual, chilling. Relax. If she keeps poking around, I'll deal with her too. I know how to make people disappear without anyone looking for them. Elena's vision swam. Her daughter had just confessed, not openly, but clearly. The truth hit with the brutality of a punch. Her missing sister, her dangerous daughter, a past Elena never questioned. A future that was slipping out of her control. Mira hung up and began humming as she moved around the room. She didn't sense the terror hiding mere feet away. She didn't know the door had been opened. She didn't know the truth had escaped. Elena remained frozen in her hiding spot long after Mira settled into bed, long after her breathing evened out, long after the house fell into its deceptive silence. She emerged only when the moon was high, her limbs trembling, her face damp with tears she hadn't noticed shedding. She didn't leave Mira's room, she fled it, down the hall, into her own room. The door shut behind her with a quiet click. And then she slid to the floor, knees pulled to her chest, shaking uncontrollably. Her daughter was a danger, a liar, a manipulator, a threat that had taken Lila, a threat that believed Elena was weak, harmless. For the first time in years, Elena didn't feel weak. She felt sharpened, cut open, awake, ready. She wiped her face and stood slowly, her breath steadying as a new, terrifying resolve coiled in her chest. If Mira was willing to walk the darkest paths, Elena would walk them too, only smarter, quicker, and with far more precision. Because for the first time, she understood something Mira had never anticipated. A mother's fear is powerful. But a mother without fear is unstoppable. The house lay silent, but inside Elena, something had begun to wake. Something that would change everything. Something that would lead her straight to the one person who could help her bring Myra down. The shadow in the city, the woman from the whispers, Sable. And for the first time, Elena didn't fear what she would become. She feared what would happen if she didn't. Coughed again, Safurfa. The shift began so quietly that even the walls of Elena's house didn't notice it. A soft, deliberate recalibration of the air, as if the home itself sensed that its owner was no longer a trembling mother holding herself together with scraps of hope. Something in Elena had clicked into place, sharp, calculated, dangerously calm. And like any storm that brews from silence, her transformation passed through the house in unseen currents. Myra didn't notice, of course she didn't. Predators rarely look behind them. For days, Elena moved through her routines with a softness designed with precision. Her footsteps were slower, her answers gentler, her gaze lowered just enough to appear harmless. She let Myra believe she had slipped back into the role she'd always played, the obedient, apologetic mother who survived on apologies and silence. But beneath that softness, Elena's mind mapped out angles, possibilities, weaknesses. She replayed everything she'd seen in Myra's room, the burner phone, coded notes, the hidden photographs of her sister. The truth was too large, too dark to deny anymore, but Elena knew better than to explode with grief or rage. Those reactions were loud, predictable, and predictable mothers died without answers, so she adapted, learned, shifted. Her first move was to step into Myra's world, not openly, not recklessly, but with the precision of someone who understood that every mistake could be fatal. And that was how she ended up in a dim cafe on the outskirts of the Dade city where street lights flickered like dying candles, and the air smelled faintly of metal and rain. Elena sat at the corner table, her hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea. She wasn't here for the drink. She was waiting for the woman her sister used to whisper about late into the night, the one who lived in shadows, not stories. Sable, that name carried weight, even on the tongue, like a blade pressed lightly against the throat. Elena didn't know if Sable would come. Elena didn't know if Sable would come. She didn't know if she was even still alive. Her sister's leadership of the underground network had always been kept secret from the family, but Sable had been the invisible second in command, the figure who handled the dirty work so Elena's sister could stay clean. At least, that was the lie Elena once told herself. She stared out through the rain-streaked window, listening to the muted hum of traffic. She was about to stand, thinking perhaps she'd miscalculated, when a faint reflection appeared in the glass. A woman took the seat across from her without a sound, like she belonged to the shadows, repacked her fur. Not the world humans walked in. Short black hair, razor-sharp eyes, leather jacket damp from rain, no greeting, no expression. Just presence. Sable. Elena didn't breathe for a full second. Sable spoke first, her voice low, almost lazy, but edged with danger. "Yay, you look like her," Elena swallowed. People say that sometimes. Sable's eyes flicked over her as observant, dissecting. "Ein, dissecting." "She always said you were the quiet one, the harmless one." Elena forced a small, brittle smile. "We both know harmless women are usually underestimated." A slow curl lifted the corner of Sable's mouth. Not quite a smile, more like approval. "What do you want, Elena?" Her sister had spoken of Sable in fragments. Fully, never enough. But one line had always stayed with her. "If you ever need to disappear or destroy something, call Sable." Hifroder furfter funk. Elena took a small breath. "I need answers first about?" Sable asked, though her expression said she already knew. "Yo, my sister," Elena said softly, fingers tightening around the teacup. "And my daughter." Sable leaned back, studying her as one might study a puzzle that had just become interesting. "Most mothers would go to the police. I'm not most mothers. And you think I have your answers?" "I think you have some of them," Elena replied. "And the rest, my daughter holds." Sable's gaze sharpened. "Myra." Elena froze. "You know her." It wasn't a question. It was a realization that tasted like betrayal and revelation at once. Sable tapped her fingers on the table slowly, rhythmically, like measuring the weight of her next words. "Your daughter walked far deeper into the network than your sister ever meant her to." The cafe felt colder. Smaller, Alina's voice was steady. Did Mira hurt her? Sable didn't answer, not directly. But the flicker in her gaze was enough. Elena looked down, her breath trembling for just a moment before she steadied it again. I'm not asking you to hurt her, she said quietly. Not yet, Sable arched a brow. Not yet? She's my daughter, Elena whispered. I need the truth before I decide anything. Sable studied her for a long, waited silence. Then she nodded once, as if accepting terms to a dangerous contract. Then we'll start with fear, Sable said calmly, as if discussing the weather. Fear reveals more than interrogation. You want answers? We shake her world. Elena didn't flinch. How? A shadow of a smirk surfaced on Sable's face. You let me in. To your home. To her mind. Elena didn't realize she was gripping her necklace until her fingers ached. The thought of Sable stepping anywhere near her child felt like walking a tightrope stretched over a pit of knives. Canned, but this wasn't about protection, not anymore. This was about truth, Elena said. Tell me what to do. Sable slid something across the table, a small, matte black device no bigger than a matchbox. Plant this in Mira's room. It will intercept her messages. I'll take care of the rest. Elena tucked the device into her coat pocket. And what do I owe you? Nothing yet, Sable replied. But once you hear what Mira's been doing, what your sister was caught in, you may owe me more than you think. The drive home felt longer than it ever had. Rain fell harder, streaking across the windshield like claw marks. Elena's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel as she tried to prepare herself for what came next. Fear. Sable had said fear reveals more than interrogation. Elena didn't want to terrify her daughter. She wanted the truth. The truth required darkness. When she stepped back into the house, Mira was sprawled across the couch, scrolling through her phone with that familiar mix of arrogance and boredom. She barely glanced up. You're late, Mira muttered. Elena simply nodded, hanging her coat on the hook by the door. Traffic! Mira rolled her eyes. Whatever! Just the tone, the entitlement, the coldness. Each piece fit into a picture Elena wished she could unsee. But the mask of the submissive mother stayed firmly in place. She had a role, and she would play it well. That night, when Mira finally went to sleep, Elena moved with silent purpose. She entered her daughter's room without turning on a light, guided only by the faint glow from the hallway. Her hands didn't shake as she placed Sable's device behind Mira's dresser. She paused on her way out, looking at her daughter sleeping peacefully beneath her blanket. Her expression soft and innocent in the dim light. At a stranger's face, a child she once knew, now a growing shadow she barely recognized. Elena whispered into the quiet. You won't hurt anyone else. Not her. Not me. The next morning marked the first ripple of the trap. Mira woke to find her phone not where she'd left it. She tore through her bed, dresser, desk, throwing clothes, books, and pillows in every direction. Elena! She screamed. Mom! Elena entered with perfect concern in her eyes. What's wrong? I lost my phone, Mira snapped. It was here last night. Elena scanned the room, then gently offered, maybe you misplaced it? The glare Mira gave her was sharp, suspicious, good, Elena thought. Let the fear begin. They searched the house for over 20 minutes. Mira grew angrier, more frantic, snapping at Elena, accusing her of moving it, judging her every suggestion with venom. And then, when Mira tore open the hallway closet, the phone lay right there on top of winter scarves. Exactly where Sable had planted it. Mira froze, breathing unevenly. I didn't put it there. Elena stepped closer, her voice soft. Are you sure? Mira stared at her phone as if it were a ticking bomb. Somebody's messing with me. Elena placed a comforting hand on her arm. Why would anyone want to do that? But Mira didn't answer. She just clutched the phone, checking through it obsessively, scrolling, deleting, scanning notifications like certain something had been changed. Because something had, Sable had taken only what she needed, enough to make Mira question reality. Over the next 3 days, the pressure tightened. A note appeared under Mira's pillow. Did you think secrets stay buried? Another was slipped into her jacket pocket while she was at school. She told someone before she disappeared. Mira confronted Elena at dinner, pacing the kitchen, chewing her nails, something she hadn't done since childhood. You haven't seen anything weird, right? She asked abruptly. Elena shook her head. No. What kind of weird? Nothing, Mira muttered, eyes darting to the doorway. Forget it, but she couldn't forget it. Fear crawled into her room with her at night. It sat with her at breakfast. It followed her like a shadow she couldn't outrun. By the fourth day, Mira looked sleep-deprived, unstable, edges fraying. Exactly as Sable had predicted, Elena watched every unraveling thread, each reaction, each whispered panic. She wasn't enjoying it, not in a cruel way, but justice required cracks, and cracks reveal truth. On the fifth night, Mira burst into Elena's room, trembling. "Someone's following me," Elena calmly set her book down. "Who? I don't know. But someone knows things they shouldn't." Elena tilted her head. "Like what?" Mira hesitated, eyes darting away. "Just things." Elena placed a gentle hand on her daughter's arm. "You can tell me." Mira pulled back, shoulders tight with guilt and paranoia. "You wouldn't understand." And she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Elena closed her eyes. That fear, sharps, terrified, guilty, told her more than a confession ever could. She wasn't done breaking, not yet, but she was close. Outside the window, a black motorcycle idled in the darkness. Sable leaned casually against it, arms crossed, eyes trained on the house. She tilted her head up just enough to catch Elena's gaze through the glass, a silent signal, ready for the next step. And Elena, the quiet mother, the harmless woman they all underestimated, felt something settle inside her. Not fear, not grief. Not hesitation. Purpose. Her daughter had built a world of lies, cruelty, and secrets. Her sister had vanished because of it. Now Mira would finally understand what it felt like, to be hunted by the truth. And Elena would be the one guiding every shadow. Kink. There is a moment in every predator's life when they realize the ground beneath them is no longer solid. Sometimes it's subtle, a displaced stone, a shift of wind. Other times, it arrives like a slap in the dark. For Mira, it began with silence, not ordinary silence, not the pleasant hush of a normal morning. This was the kind that hummed with the absence of something familiar, something essential, control. She sat at the edge of her bed with trembling fingers, scrolling through her phone as if she could force the world back into its rightful shape. Messages she had sent days earlier, commands, threats, promises, remained unread. Contacts she once relied on, people who would jump with a single word, had gone dark. All of them ghosted. Gone. Her breath hitched. No, this isn't right. Nothing in Mira's world happened without her knowing. Nothing shifted unless she pushed it, so why did it feel like someone else was now doing the pushing? She pulled her jacket on, grabbed her bag, and stormed out of the house. Elena heard the door slam, but she didn't follow. She simply watched from the kitchen window, fingers wrapped around a warm mug of tea. Sable's bike was parked half a block away, hidden beneath the shadow of an oak tree, waiting, watching. Elena nodded once toward the dark silhouette. Sable nodded back. The trap tightened. Mira's first stop was an abandoned garage on the west side of town, technically abandoned. But Mira knew better. Behind its rusted doors and peeling paint was the meeting spot for one of her oldest connections, a man named Veron. He wasn't a friend, Mira didn't have those. He was a supplier, a fixer, a man who traded secrets like currency. And he owed her. She pushed the door open. The garage swallowed her in a wave of damp air and metallic dust. Tools were scattered everywhere, as if someone had left in a hurry. Mira scanned the shadows. "Veron? You here?" No answer. Her boots echoed sharply across the concrete as she walked deeper in. A single overhead bulb flickered, casting long, trembling shadows across the floor. She found Veron's workstation overturned, papers strewn, drawers pulled out, a smashed laptop lying against the far wall. Her chest tightened. This wasn't random. Veron didn't panic. Someone had come for him. Someone had walked straight into her territory and dismantled one of her strongest anchors. And then she saw it, a single sheet of paper taped to the wall, her own handwriting. "I warned you not to cross me." Mira stumbled back, heart slamming against her ribs. "I didn't." She paused, breath turning sharp. She didn't write this. She hadn't been here. But the handwriting, it was hers. Someone was mimicking her. Someone wanted it to look like she had betrayed Veron. Who? A cold wave rolled across her as she replayed the past week. The missing phone, the notes, the shifting shadows, the whispering fear. Someone was in her world. Someone smart, someone quiet. Yeah, her mother flashed through her mind for a moment, but Mira pushed the thought away with force. Elena? No. Elena could barely navigate her own emotions, let alone Mira's criminal network. Her mother was weak, scared, simple, right? Mira shook the thought off and rushed back outside. The wind slapped her face, grounding her for a moment. She needed more answers. And she headed to her second contact, a hacker named Priam who lived in a basement apartment filled with old monitors and new sins. Priam always picked up. Always. She dialed his number. 1 ring. 2, 3, nothing. Mira clenched her jaw and called again, then again. But the line stayed empty. She cursed under her breath and drove straight to his apartment. When she arrived, the hallway lights flickered, buzzing like dying flies. She knocked. "Hard, Priam!" "Open the door, Silence." "Gah!" She knocked again, louder this time. Then she noticed the small gap near the bottom of the door. The latch wasn't locked. The door was slightly ajar. Mira pushed it open. The room was stripped bare, not ransacked. Cleared. Carefully. Deliberately. Priam had run or been made to run. Either way, Mira felt the ground shift beneath her. Her empire, small but powerful, was evaporating before her eyes. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't luck. Someone was dismantling her life piece by piece, and that someone knew exactly where to strike. And back home, Elena played her role beautifully. Soft footsteps, gentle questions, the trembling, worried mother who just wanted her daughter to be okay. She saw Mira's growing panic, the way the girl paced the kitchen like a trapped animal, whispering curses under her breath, checking her phone every few seconds as if expecting it to explode. Elena didn't ask where she had been. She simply placed a bowl of soup in front of her and said, "You look tired." Mira snapped, "I'm fine." Elena nodded, voice calm. "Of course, but sometimes even hunters get lost." Mira froze. Elena didn't look at her. Didn't emphasize the word. She only stirred the soup gently as if she had said something ordinary. And Dean heard it. But Mira heard it, felt it. A needle slipped quietly under her skin. What's that supposed to mean?" Mira demanded. "You." Elena looked up with soft, motherly eyes. "Just an expression I heard once." Lies rolled off her tongue like honey. She had learned more from her daughter than Mira realized. Mira pushed the soup away and stormed upstairs. Elena watched her go, feeling Sable's presence outside the house like a shadow stitched into the night. Everything was unfolding perfectly. By evening, Mira was spiraling. She paced her room, muttering to herself, replaying conversations, rewriting timelines. She dialed Veron again, no answer. She messaged Priam on encrypted channels, no reply. She even reached out to 2 people she hadn't spoken to in months. Nothing. Ringed. Every thread in her web had been cut, every ally gone, every direction blocked. She slammed her fist against her desk, letting out a low, shaking growl. She didn't scare easily. But now something unspoken was crawling beneath her skin, a realization she wasn't the hunter anymore. She was prey, and someone was closing in. She grabbed her coat and rushed outside. She needed fresh air. She needed to think. Or maybe she needed to run. But the moment she stepped out, the streetlight across the road flickered, and a figure leaned against the motorcycle parked beneath it. "Yeah, Sable." Mira went still, completely still. Sable tilted her head slightly, an expression almost too subtle to decipher. Ruptugation. And warning, Mira stepped back instinctively, heart pounding in her throat. She hadn't seen Sable since. That night, the night her aunt vanished, the night everything changed, she whispered, "No, you're not real." But Sable didn't move, didn't blink, didn't break. She was real, and she was here. Mira stumbled inside the house, slamming the door and locking it twice. She dropped to the floor, hands shaking uncontrollably. She tried to breathe, but each breath felt like it scraped against her ribs. She pushed herself up, ran to her mother's room, and burst inside. "Elena, we need to go now." "Ka?" Elena looked up from her sewing machine with calm confusion. "Go? Where? Anywhere," Mira screamed. "She's here. Who?" "Sable," Mira whispered, voice cracking. "She found me." Elena stood slowly, gently, placing a hand on Mira's cheek as if calming a frightened child. "You must be mistaken." Mira pulled away. "I'm not mistaken. She was out there." Elena stepped closer. "Then tell me the truth. All of it. Why are you so afraid of her?" Mira's eyes widened. I don't. But Elena didn't let her look away. "Why, Mira?" she asked softly, the question edged with something new. "Something heavy. What did you do to my sister?" Mira's breath froze. Her pupils narrowed to pinpoints. Henk. For the first time in her life, she looked speechless. And Elena saw it, the crack she had been waiting for, the fracture in Mira's mask. The truth waiting to spill like blood, but before Mira could answer, something echoed outside. A soft tap. A shift of shadow. The house held its breath. Mira backed away, trembling. She followed me. Ow? Elena didn't look at the window. She didn't need to. You can't. Because this time the fear Mira felt wasn't planted, wasn't manipulated. It was real. Second, Sable had arrived exactly where Elena wanted her to be. The night was no longer about traps or hints or pressure. It was about revelation. And Mira, the predator, the manipulator, the cold-hearted girl who believed she owned every room she walked into, was about to face the one woman she never wanted to see again. Not in dreams, not in nightmares, not in life, Sable. And with her arrival, there would be no more running. Only truth. There are mornings that arrive quietly, and there are mornings that carry the weight of years. This one carried both. At first glance, the house seemed normal. Birds outside, sun pouring in through half-open curtains, a kettle steaming softly on the stove. But beneath that gentle stillness lived a different truth, a truth that hummed like electricity beneath floorboards. Waiting for someone to step into it. Elena set the table carefully, with the same tenderness she used to reserve for birthdays and holidays. A clean white tablecloth, her best ceramic plates, warm bread placed in the center, 2 perfectly folded napkins. One for her, one for the guest, and not a single plate for Mira. The symbolism wasn't subtle. Elena didn't want subtle today. She poured tea into the cups, steam rising in soft spirals, and her hands didn't shake. For the first time in years, for the first time in years, they didn't shake at all. Behind her, sitting at the table with quiet poise, was Sable. Her presence changed the room instantly, calm, unmoving, shadow made of flesh and silence. Her dark coat hung neatly over the chair, and beside her sat a brown envelope thick with the evidence she'd collected. Photos, transcripts, recordings, the truth Mira spent years twisting. Sable rested her hand gently on top of the envelope, as if protecting it, and as if guarding the justice Elena had been denied. "Are you ready?" Sable asked softly. Elena set the teapot down and exhaled. "No," she said. "Oh, but I'm willing." Sable nodded once. "That's enough." Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. The morning had begun. Mira woke the way trapped animals wake, fast, disoriented, breath already panicked. Her room felt smaller, air thicker. The night before replayed in flashes Sable's silhouette, her mother's eyes. Hell, the question she couldn't answer. And now, silence, not the comforting kind. The kind that meant someone else held the reins. She stumbled out of bed, hair tangled, eyes wild. Her throat was dry, her hands trembled. She reached for her phone, gone, her bag, emptied. Her drawers, slightly open, rearranged. Someone had been in her room again. She spun around, terrified. "Mom?" No response. She hurried to the staircase, each step echoing like a countdown. She knew she should run out the back door. She knew she should escape now while she still could, but fear didn't let her. Fear dragged her forward. Fear dragged her downstairs. Fear dragged her into the last place she ever wanted to be, the dining room. För kaffeamenem the shopbruk and the sach kleschen satasen för nan malkor. The moment Mira stepped inside, the world shifted. Elena didn't turn to look. She kept stirring her tea, slow and gentle like this morning was any other. But Sable did look. A soft, measured glance, not angry, not triumphant, just certain. Mira froze in the doorway, her knees nearly buckled. Sable, Elibov, Sable house, with Hansable. It wasn't possible. Mira pied, Able. Sable. In her Sable? With the envelope. It wasn't possible, Ra whispered, unable to breathe. "You're supposed to be gone," Sable finished for her. "I was." The words weren't loud, but they carved through the room like a blade. Mira's eyes darted toward Elena, wide, shaking. "Mom, what is this? Why did you let her?" "I invited her," Elena said calmly. The teacup clicked softly against its saucer. The sound felt like a verdict. Mira shook her head violently. "No, you wouldn't. You don't even know her." Elena finally turned. Her eyes were different, not angry, not grieving. Not defeated, clear, sharp, focused. I know her better than you think, Elena said. She was the last person your aunt trusted, and you made sure neither of them could speak to me again. Mira took a step back. No, Mom, listen. Don't lie. Elena's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. You've the Ferb spent years lying. Ha set. So the affection ping Persian hundred stop. It didn't need to. You've spent years lying. You can stop now. Sable slid the envelope across the table. It landed with a quiet thud, heavy, inevitable. Mira stared at it as if it were something alive. Elena saw your notebook, Sable said, saw your codes, your photos, your threats, your network collapsing piece by piece. Mira's face drained of color. You framed Varan, Sable continued. You pushed Priam into hiding. You leveraged guilt and fear until people had nothing left to give you, and then you moved on. Mira's voice cracked. I did what I had to. People owed me. They feared you, Elena said. Just like Lila did, and just like you wanted me to. That made Mira's breath stop. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words formed. Sable placed a single photograph on the table. Lila, standing beside a car at night, face bruised, eyes filled with regret. Mira's hand twitched. This was taken 2 hours before she disappeared, Sable said quietly. She came to you for help. You were the last person she trusted. And you used her. No, she. She was trying to leave us out of. Mira stuttered. Truth, Sable cut in with cold precision. Say it. Mira's lips trembled. She wasn't supposed to. I didn't mean to. Everything spiraled and… Elena's voice sliced through her excuses. You broke her. Mira covered her ears. Stop. You threatened her. No, Mom, I didn't. You blackmailed her. Please. Ice. Don't. You told her you'd destroy me if she didn't help you. Mira dropped to her knees. Elena stood slowly, pushing her chair back with a controlled grace that made Mira flinch. She walked toward her daughter, not with affection, not with pity, with clarity. You wanted Lila to take the fall for your mistakes, Elena said softly. So when she tried to walk away, you made sure she stayed silent. Mira stared up at her, eyes glassy and terrified. I didn't kill her, no, Sable said. But you pushed her into running, and she never made it out of the city alive. Mira choked on a sob, shaking violently. Elena crouched, bringing herself to Mira's eye level. For years, she whispered, I thought I failed as a sister. I thought I failed as a mother. But you manipulated both of us. You loved control more than you loved family. Mira bit her trembling lip. Mom, please, you used my love as a weapon. You used my silence as permission. And you believed I was too weak to fight back. Elena leaned closer, her voice barely above a breath. You were wrong. Something in Mira shattered, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like glass breaking beneath a rug. Sable stepped forward, her coat rustling softly. It's over, Mira. Your contacts are gone. Your leverage is gone. Every message you ever sent is archived, every threat recorded, every lie documented. Mira's head fell forward. So, she couldn't run, she couldn't hide, she couldn't manipulate the truth anymore. Elena placed a hand gently, almost kindly, on her daughter's head. You won't disappear people anymore, she whispered. You won't hurt anyone again, not me, not Sable, not the ghosts of the people you broke. Mira's breaths turned shallow, panicked. What? What happens now? Elena stepped back, straightening her posture. Consequences. Sable opened the back door. 2 figures stepped inside, quiet, professional, faces unreadable. They weren't police. They weren't friends. They were people who worked in the gray, just like Mira, people who owed Sable favors. People who ensured justice when official channels failed. Mira's scream never fully formed. The men lifted her without cruelty, without anger, more like handlers retrieving a dangerous animal. She didn't fight. She couldn't. Her eyes locked onto her mother's. Elena. Mom. Don't let them. Please, please, I'm your daughter. Elena's heart tightened, but it didn't break. Then you should have acted like one. The men took Mira out the door. Yeah, Bass. Her voice faded into the morning light. Sable closed the door behind them, sealing the house in a heavy, cleansing silence. Elena let out a long, trembling breath. Not relief. Not victory, release. Justice didn't feel triumphant. It felt necessary. Sable placed a hand on her shoulder. You didn't do this out of vengeance. You did it out of truth. Aver falfav bakkelsamen seftify. Elena nodded, tears finally breaking free. It had to end, and it did. Sable picked up her coat. I'll handle the rest. Elena didn't ask where they were taking Mira. She didn't ask what would happen next. Some truths are too heavy for questions. She walked back to the dining table, looked at the 2 untouched plates, and whispered to herself, The table was always meant for 2. One for the woman she lost, one for the woman who helped her find justice, and none for the girl who destroyed both. The morning sunlight reached across the tablecloth, soft and warm, as if the house itself exhaled for the first time in years. Elena sat down, hands steady, heart quiet. Justice, at last, had a seat at the table.